Greetings again, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, with a follow-up video on one I posted fairly recently about group theory with a subtext of how it connects to copyright. Now, that's kind of a dry subject, but this follow-up should be fun and interesting, hopefully. It's about what is individuality, and this is a confusing idea to some people, I think. I want to share my thoughts on the subject. I've done some thinking about group theory and individuality, and they're connected, obviously, because a group is a collection of individuals, but it's a hypothetical collection, and that was the substance of my video before, how groups are not real. And what I mean by that, to review real quick, is groups exist only in the realm of the hypothetical. There's a lot of things that don't exist in reality, like actual true reality, but they exist hypothetically. And for example, there are numbers. You've seen numbers. You're familiar with quantities and numbers and math. All this stuff, perfection, absolutes. There's a whole big list of things that aren't in our universe, but they exist in the mind. They exist in a hypothetical form. So what is an individual? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what defines or comprises a unit, a single individual thing. Because somebody, I believe, had a question or some confusion about what I said regarding groups being not real. The example that came up was the word birds, for example. It's easy to be confused, I guess, about how birds as a group, and you can think of it that way, the meaning of the word, the common meaning, is a group of animals who fall under a very well-defined classification. And so at this point you're thinking, well, I know birds are real because I see them all the time. So if birds as a group isn't real, how can you explain that? So the explanation, there is one. The explanation, very simple, is individual birds are real, but the group is hypothetical still. Now, even if it has very well-defined parameters, a boundary, the group. Now, separate the idea of a group from a grouping. A grouping is a noun. You can have a grouping of something, and that's real. Not to split hairs, but there is a difference between a group, which is an idea. It's just an idea. And how you know it's an idea is because you can take it apart completely just by thinking about it. And it changes shape. You can form an agreement on a group and then change the agreement without actually physically changing anything at all. And that's how you know it's just hypothetical. So therefore it's not real. There's two different universes. You can think about it this way. It's a model of looking at it. There's the real world, that is comprised of everything that is true. And then there's the hypothetical world, which, like I said, contains things that are in idea form only. Not to go on and on, but so what is an individual? A group is a collection of individuals, and I think it's illustrative. It's helpful to understand what an individual is, because there's more confusion when you get down to that and you start thinking, well, aren't individuals just groups of smaller things, and that's valid? Okay, so let's talk about that. Individuality is typically a conglomeration, or a group, if you will, if you want to look at it that way, of fairly different components. And there's always a property to an individual that emerges. Now, this is the word. The key word here is emergent. There's an emergent property, which means there's an identity that comes from more than the sum of the parts. And this is a very difficult idea for a lot of people, to think about things that are more than the sum of their parts. We tend to like to break things down, and we dissect them and analyze them as components, as their constituents. And you're not going to find the identity of an individual in any of its components, with a few exceptions, of course. DNA, for example, is sort of a fractal image of the whole, right? So anyway, there are some fractal exceptions, and even that, you're going to find it's not exactly the same. it's on a different scale. It's got perhaps some errors or differences between cells or DNA instances, whatever. But fractal exceptions aside, individuals are collections of components. Usually the components are wildly different enough so that when they come together in a certain way, a very specific way, when they're organized in a specific way, a property emerges from that organization itself, the way in which it is organized, that gives rise to the individual. And the individual is it has a boundary. So it has a boundary, and it has a set of components that, when combined, emerge as an identity. So hopefully that helps. So in the last video about group theory, the way this applies to that, a group is you take what I just said about individuals, and you can create a symbol, a hypothetical group that simplifies the affiliations between the individuals, or the associations, the connections between them. And we are always on the lookout for connections. At some point in our recent history, psychologists or scientists have told us all that genius finds connections, and we just ran with that ball to the end of the field and never looked back. I think it's actually the opposite. I think that genius sees the differences more than the connections. It's real easy to see connections. It's super easy to see connections that don't even exist. And this is, I think, an opportunity. It's a big problem that we all face in our communities, that people jumping to conclusions, forming unsubstantiated connections between ideas and people and events. And I think that it would help everyone if we got in the habit of separating things more. And so that was sort of the impetus for my last video about group theory and the opportunities there of seeing how groups don't exist in reality. You cannot find a location of a group. You can have a headquarters. It's where the building is, and you can say that the group is centered there, but it's all still hypothetical. For example, you sell the building to someone, the building's still where it was, but where'd the group go? I mean, I don't know. Anyway, it's been an 8-minute video, so if you have any questions, my email is whitehotrobot@gmail.com, and I love to talk about this stuff. It's philosophy, logic, whatever. Reach out if you feel like it, and have a great day. Thanks.